You know what I noticed about my grandson the other morning? He woke up like someone had just handed him the keys to Disneyland. Eyes wide open, ready to go, asking 1,000 questions before breakfast. And I'm sitting there with my coffee thinking about how I used to be that way. We all did. Somewhere between childhood and wherever you are right now, something happened. We stopped waking up excited and started waking up tired. We stopped seeing the world as new and started seeing it as the same old thing. And that right there, that's the tragedy I want to talk to you about today. Here's what I've learned after all these years. Most people are living their lives like they're in the middle of a book they've already read. They know how the chapter goes, they think they know how it ends, so they stop paying attention to the words on the page. They treat today like it's just another Tuesday, another month, another year that looks exactly like the last one. And while they're doing that, while they're sleepwalking through their precious hours, life is slipping through their fingers like water. Let me tell you about the day I woke up. I mean, really woke up. I was 25 years old, working a job I didn't care about, coming home to an apartment that didn't feel like home, going through motions I couldn't even remember starting. One morning I'm standing in front of the bathroom mirror and I don't recognize the person staring back at me. Not because I'd changed so much, but because I realized I hadn't changed at all. I was the same person I'd been at 21, just older, just more tired, just more convinced that this was all there was, and something in me snapped. Not broke, mind you, but snapped awake. I asked myself a question that morning that changed everything. If this were my first day alive, would I spend it like this? And the answer made me sick to my stomach. Because no, I wouldn't. If I'd just arrived on this planet, if I'd just been given the gift of being human, I sure wouldn't waste it being bored, being cynical, being half asleep at the wheel of my own life. That's when I understood the first part of what I'm trying to teach you today. We need to act as if every day were the first day. Not pretend, not fake it, but actually see the world the way a beginner sees it. But here's where most motivational speakers stop, and here's where they get it wrong. They tell you to live every day like it's your first, to embrace wonder, to stay curious, and they think that's enough. It's not. Because if you only live like it's your first day, you'll never get anything done. You'll be so busy marveling at the sunrise that you'll forget to plant the seeds. You'll be so enchanted by possibilities that you'll never commit to the hard work of making one possibility real. The person who only lives like it's their first day becomes a perpetual tourist in their own life, always visiting, never building, never creating anything that lasts. That's why you need the second part, the part that makes this whole thing work. You've got to work as if it's your last day. Not in some morbid, desperate way, but with the kind of focus and urgency that comes when you realize you don't have forever. When you know that this conversation, this phone call, this chance to make something better might not come around again, that changes everything about how you operate. Think about it this way. If you knew for certain that today was your last day to work on your business, how would you spend those hours? You wouldn't waste time on things that don't matter. You wouldn't put off the important conversation. You wouldn't save your best effort for later. You'd pour everything you have into making it count. You'd work with precision, with purpose, with a level of care that most people reserve for some imaginary future when they finally feel ready. The magic happens when you combine these two ways of seeing. When you can look at your work with fresh eyes and urgent hands. When you can approach your marriage like it's brand new, and also like it's precious because it might not last forever. When you can greet your children with the wonder of seeing them for the first time and the wisdom of knowing that one day they'll be grown and gone. That's the paradox, and that's the power. Most people lose their first day energy somewhere around day 30. You've seen it happen. Someone starts a new job and they're on fire. They show up early, they ask questions, they care about getting it right. 6 months later, they're watching the clock counting down to Friday, doing just enough to get by. What happened? They let familiarity kill their enthusiasm. They started thinking they knew everything there was to know. They stopped being beginners and became bureaucrats of their own lives. And here's the thing about familiarity. It's a liar. It tells you that because you've seen something before, you know all about it. It tells you that because you've been married 10 years, you know everything about your spouse. That because you've been in business 5 years, you've learned all the lessons. That's nonsense. Every day brings new information, new chances. new ways to grow. But you'll miss all of it if you're not paying attention, if you're running on autopilot, if you think you've got it all figured out. The cost of this sleepwalking is higher than most people realize. It's not just that you miss opportunities, though you do. It's not just that you stop growing, though you will. The real cost is that you stop living. You start existing. You trade the adventure of being alive for the comfort of routine. And routine, let me tell you, routine without purpose is just a slow death you're calling a life. I've watched people do this for decades. They treat their life like a dress rehearsal. They're saving their best self for some future performance that never comes. They're waiting to really try until conditions are perfect, until they feel ready, until the stars align. Meanwhile, the show is happening right now. The audience is here, the curtain is up, and they're still in the back room, still getting ready, still telling themselves that the real life starts tomorrow. Here's the truth that nobody wants to hear. Tomorrow isn't promised. I don't say that to scare you. I say it because it's a fact, and facts are our friends if we let them be. Every single thing you're looking at right now, every person you love, every dream you're chasing, every problem you're solving, it all exists in this moment. This is not the before time. This is not the waiting room. This is it. This is your life happening in real time, and you get to decide whether you're going to sleepwalk through it or wake up and participate. When you act as if every day were the first, you bring curiosity to the table. You ask better questions. You notice things you would have missed. You listen like you've never heard this story before, even if you have. You look at your business with beginner's eyes, and suddenly you see inefficiencies you'd stopped noticing, opportunities you'd overlooked, possibilities that familiarity had hidden from you. That's the gift of treating today like it's new, because in all the ways that matter, it is new. It's never been October 4th, 2025 before. This exact moment, with all its unique circumstances and chances, has never existed until right now. But curiosity without action is just entertainment. That's why you need both sides of this coin. You need the childlike amazement at being alive, and you need the mature understanding that your time is limited and therefore precious. You need to wake up grateful for another day and simultaneously aware that you don't know how many more you're going to get. The people who changed my life, the mentors who shaped who I became, they all had this quality. They could be completely present in the moment, delighted by a simple conversation, fascinated by a new idea, and at the same time they worked with an intensity that came from knowing that time matters. They didn't waste your time or theirs. They didn't put off until tomorrow what could create value today. They understood something that took me years to learn. Every moment is both a gift and a responsibility. What does this look like in real terms? It means you walk into your office or your home or wherever you work and you see it with new eyes. You notice the opportunity in that difficult client. Instead of just seeing the hassle, you recognize the chance to build something meaningful with your team instead of just managing another day. You understand that the person in front of you, whether it's your customer or your child, is giving you their time. And time is the one thing none of us can make more of. And while you're seeing everything fresh, you're also working like you won't get another chance. You're having the hard conversation today instead of pushing it to next week. You're making the extra call. You're doing the deeper research. You're putting in the effort that separates mastery from mediocrity. Not because someone is making you, but because you know that someday is a place that doesn't exist, and later is a luxury you can't afford. Now let me tell you something about curiosity that most people miss completely. They think curiosity is just about learning for learning's sake, about being interested in things, about having hobbies and passions. And sure, that's part of it. But what I've discovered is that curiosity is actually one of the most profitable attitudes you can develop. When you're genuinely curious about your customers, about your craft, about the problems you're trying to solve, you see things that the person who's just going through the motions will never see. You ask the question that leads to the breakthrough. You notice the small detail that becomes the big advantage. I remember this farmer I knew years ago. Wonderful man, worked his land for 40 seasons. One year he found out he had a terminal illness. The doctors gave him maybe 6 months. And you know what he did? He planted his crops anyway. He worked that field like he had 40 more years ahead of him. People thought he was crazy. They'd say, "Why are you working so hard? You won't even be here for the harvest." And he'd smile and say, "That's exactly why I'm working so hard. If this is my last harvest, I'm going to make it my best one. And if by some miracle it's not my last, well then I'll have created something worth leaving behind." That farmer taught me more about life philosophy than a dozen books ever could. See, he understood something profound. He understood that the quality of your work has nothing to do with how much time you have left. It has everything to do with how much respect you have for the work itself. He planted those seeds with the care of someone who was doing it for the first time, making sure each one went in just right, but he also planted them with the urgency of someone who knew he might not get another chance. And that combination, that's where excellence lives. Most people are operating on the exact opposite principle. They're working like they have all the time in the world, so they're sloppy, they're careless, they're postponing their best effort for some future season that may never come. And at the same time, they've lost all the wonder, all the curiosity, all the joy that makes the work worth doing in the first place. So they're getting neither the productivity of urgency nor the innovation of fresh thinking. They're stuck in the worst of both worlds. Here's what happens when you combine these two mindsets in your actual work. Let's say you're in sales. If you treat every customer like it's your first customer ever, you're genuinely curious about them. You're not running your script, you're having a real conversation. You're listening for what they actually need instead of just waiting for your turn to pitch. You're fascinated by their business, their challenges, their goals. That's the first day thinking. But then you add the last day urgency. You're not putting off the follow-up until next week. You're not being casual about the details. You're not leaving anything to chance because you know that this might be the only shot you get with this person. You're bringing precision and care to every single interaction. When you work like that, something interesting happens. You stop worrying about whether you're going to make the sale because you're too busy actually serving the person in front of you. You stop stressing about quotas and numbers because you're focused on doing something genuinely valuable. And ironically, paradoxically, that's when the sales start coming easier. That's when the results start showing up. Because people can feel the difference between someone who's just trying to close them and someone who actually cares about getting it right. The same principle applies if you're a teacher. You walk into that classroom like it's your first day teaching and you're amazed that you get to do this, that you get to help shape young minds, that you get to make a difference. But you also teach like it's your last day, like this might be the only chance you have to reach that one student who really needs what you have to offer. So you don't phone it in. You don't just repeat last year's lecture, you bring everything you've got every time, because the combination of wonder and urgency won't let you do anything less. Or maybe you're a parent. You come home from work and instead of seeing the same old chaos, the same old mess, the same old demands, you try something radical. You look at your kids like you're seeing them for the first time today. You notice how they've grown, how they're changing, how they're becoming whole people right before your eyes. That's the first day perspective. But you also interact with them like you won't get tomorrow, guaranteed. You don't put off the conversation. You don't say you're too tired to listen. You don't assume you'll have 1,000 more chances to tell them you love them. Maybe you will, and I hope you do, but acting like you might not changes the way you show up right now. What I'm describing here isn't some feel-good philosophy that sounds nice but doesn't work in the real world. This is practical economics. Your time is your most valuable asset. It's the one thing you can't buy more of, can't borrow, can't save up for later. Every hour you waste being bored, being cynical, being half-present, that's an hour you'll never get back. That's an investment you're making in nothing, and nothing is exactly what it pays back. But when you treat your time like it's both infinitely valuable and wonderfully new, you start making different choices. You stop spending hours on activities that don't move anything forward. You stop giving your attention to people and projects that drain you without filling anything back up. You become selective, not because you're being snobby or exclusive, but because you realize that saying yes to everything means saying yes to nothing that really matters. I've made every mistake there is to make in this area. I've wasted years treating important relationships like they'd always be there. I've postponed meaningful work because I thought I had plenty of time. I've let familiarity rob me of gratitude, let routine replace genuine engagement, let the comfort of the known keep me from the growth that comes from staying curious. And every single time, I paid for it. Not always immediately, but eventually the bill always comes due. The person who works with urgency but without wonder, let me tell you what happens to them. They burn out. They accomplish things, sure, but they hate every minute of it. They're so focused on the deadline, on the pressure, on getting it done, that they forget why they started in the first place. They lose touch with the meaning behind the motion. And eventually, they either quit or they become bitter, angry people who resent their own success because it cost them their joy. On the other hand, the person who has all the wonder but no urgency, they end up broke and disappointed. They're full of ideas but empty of results. They're always starting new projects but never finishing anything. They're so enchanted by possibility that they never commit to making one specific possibility real. They drift through life like a tourist, experiencing everything but building nothing. And they wake up at 60 wondering why they have nothing to show for all those years of good intentions. But get both sides working together and you've got something powerful. You've got the enthusiasm that makes the work enjoyable and the discipline that makes it productive. You've got the creativity that comes from seeing things fresh and the execution that comes from knowing you can't wait forever. You've got someone who loves what they do and actually gets it done. That's the sweet spot. That's where you want to live. Think about the successful people you know, the ones who've actually built something lasting. I guarantee you, if you look closely, they've all got this quality. They're still excited about their work, still asking questions, still learning, still approaching each day like there's something new to find out. But they're also showing up on time, meeting their commitments, doing the unglamorous work that success requires. They're not choosing between passion and discipline. They're insisting on both. Here's a simple test you can run on yourself. Starting tomorrow morning, take any task you have to do, anything on your schedule. Ask yourself 2 questions. First, if I were doing this for the very first time, what would I want to know? What would I be curious about? How would I approach this if I had beginner's eyes? Second, if this were my last chance to do this task, to serve this client, to have this conversation, what would I make sure I didn't miss? What would I want to get exactly right? The answers to those 2 questions will tell you everything you need to know about whether you're really bringing your best self to the table. And I'll tell you right now, most of the time, for most people, the answer is going to be uncomfortable. Because most of the time, we're not bringing curiosity, we're bringing assumptions. We're bringing habit. We're bringing the worn-out patterns we've been running for so long we don't even see them anymore. And we're definitely not bringing urgency. We're bringing procrastination. We're bringing, I'll get to it later, we're bringing good enough for now. Good enough for now is the enemy of everything great you could become. It's the compromise that costs you your future. It's the little voice that says you can mail it in today because you'll make up for it tomorrow. But tomorrow comes, and the same voice is still there, still telling you the same lie, and before you know it, you've spent a decade giving less than you're capable of giving and wondering why you're not getting the results you want. The truth is, every day you're making deposits or withdrawals from the bank account of your life. Every conversation, every task, every choice, it's either adding to your wealth or taking away from it. And I'm not just talking about money, though this principle absolutely applies to finances. I'm talking about the wealth of relationships, the wealth of skills, the wealth of reputation, the wealth of character. Every single day, you're either becoming more valuable or less valuable. And the deciding factor is whether you're showing up with both wonder and urgency or just going through the motions. Most people are making withdrawals they don't even know about. They're taking from their marriage by being half present during dinner. They're taking from their career by doing mediocre work. They're taking from their health by treating their body like it's invincible. They're taking from their future by living like they have unlimited time to figure things out. And then they act surprised when the account runs dry, when the relationship falls apart, when the opportunity passes them by, when the diagnosis comes back serious. Now, what I'm asking you to do here requires something most people aren't willing to develop. It requires you to become 2 people at the same time. You've got to be the excited beginner and the seasoned veteran in the same moment. You've got to hold both perspectives in your mind simultaneously, and that takes practice. It takes discipline. It's not something that just happens naturally. Let me tell you where I went wrong for years. I'd swing back and forth like a pendulum. Some months I'd be all enthusiasm, all possibility, all wonder. I'd start new projects, chase new ideas, get excited about every opportunity that came along. And I'd accomplish absolutely nothing because I had no follow-through, no discipline, no structure to channel all that energy into something productive. Then I'd swing the other way. I'd get serious, get focused, get disciplined. I'd work with intensity and urgency, and I'd burn myself out completely because there was no joy in it, no curiosity, no sense of why any of it mattered beyond just getting it done. What I finally learned is that you can't choose one or the other. You need both, working together all the time. That's the discipline I'm talking about. The discipline to maintain dual consciousness, to be structured enough that you're productive, but flexible enough that you're still open to discovery, to work with a plan but remain willing to see things you didn't plan for. Think about a master craftsman, someone who's been doing their trade for 30 years. The best ones, they still approach each project with genuine interest. They're still curious about the wood or the metal or whatever material they're working with. They're still asking themselves how they can do it better this time. But they're also bringing 3 decades of skill and wisdom to every cut, every measurement, every decision. They're not trying to reinvent the wheel, but they're also not just mindlessly repeating what they did yesterday. That's dual consciousness in action. Or look at the veteran teacher who's taught the same subject for 20 years, but still prepares for class like it matters. They know the material backward and forward, but they're still thinking about how to make it clearer, how to reach different kinds of students, how to bring the lesson to life. They've got the structure, the lesson plan, the tested methods that work, but they're also showing up fresh, paying attention, noticing which students are struggling today, adjusting in real time. They're not winging it, but they're not stuck on autopilot either. The rookie who thinks they know everything after 6 months, they're missing half the equation. They've got enthusiasm, but no depth. They're asking questions, but not listening to the answers because they're too busy being impressed with themselves. On the other hand, the veteran who's stopped being curious, who just shows up and collects a paycheck, they're missing the other half. They've got knowledge, but no vitality. They're going through motions that used to mean something but don't anymore. What you want is planned spontaneity. I know that sounds like a contradiction, but it's not. You want systems and routines that free you up to be present and responsive. You want a morning routine that's solid enough that you don't have to think about it, which means you can use that mental energy to actually notice what's happening around you. You want business processes that are reliable enough that they run smoothly, which gives you the freedom to focus on the creative parts, the relationship parts, the parts that require you to be fully alive and engaged. Most people fail at this because they think structure kills spontaneity. They think if they get too organized, too disciplined, too systematic, they'll lose the magic, the creativity, the joy. But that's backwards. The right structure doesn't kill spontaneity, it enables it. When you know your fundamentals cold, when you've practiced the basics 10,000 times, that's when you're free to improvise, to try something new, to respond to the moment instead of being overwhelmed by it. Here's what this looks like practically. You set up your life so the important things happen automatically. You don't debate whether to exercise or save money or invest in your education. Those aren't decisions you make fresh every day based on how you feel. Those are systems you've built, habits you've established, structures you maintain. That's the urgency side. The last day thinking that says, these things matter too much to leave to chance. But within that structure, you remain completely open and curious. You're trying new exercises, learning new skills, asking better questions. You're not rigid, you're reliable. There's a big difference. So now let's bring this all together and talk about what you're actually building here. Because when you live with both first day wonder and last day urgency, you're not just getting more done or feeling better about your work. You're creating something that outlasts you. You're building a legacy in real time with every decision you make, every conversation you have, every task you complete. Here's the test I want you to run on everything you do. Ask yourself, would I approach this differently if it were my first time doing it? If the answer is yes, that tells you you've gotten lazy, you've gotten complacent, you've stopped paying attention. Then ask, would I do this differently if it were my last chance to do it? If the answer is yes, that tells you you're not bringing enough urgency, enough care, enough respect for the moment. Anytime both answers are yes, you know you're not operating at your best. Let me tell you about a man I knew who ran a small bookstore. Nothing fancy, nothing that would make the news. But every single person who walked into that store, he treated them like they were the first customer he'd ever had and the last one he'd ever get. He'd ask what they were interested in, really listen to the answer, and then he'd walk them around the store sharing books he thought they'd love. He didn't just point to a section. He didn't just ring up the sale. He created an experience every single time. And you know what? That little bookstore thrived for 40 years in a world where big chains were putting everyone else out of business. Because he understood something those chains never figured out. People don't just want books. They want to feel seen, heard, valued. They want someone who cares. That bookstore owner, he was building something with every interaction. He was making deposits in the relationship bank account with every customer. He was creating a reputation, one person at a time. And because he worked like each day mattered and approached each customer with genuine curiosity, he built something that meant something. That's legacy. Not what you leave behind after you die, but what you create while you're alive. The relationship between gratitude and accountability, that's where this whole philosophy comes together. Gratitude is your first day thinking. You're grateful for another morning, another chance, another opportunity to be alive and participate in this world. You don't take it for granted. You notice the gift of it. But accountability is your last day thinking. You know you're responsible for what you do with the gift. You know that being grateful isn't enough if you waste what you've been given. So gratitude gives you the joy, and accountability gives you the discipline, and together they create a life worth living. This approach protects you from two dangers that destroy most people's potential. First, it protects you from complacency. You can't get complacent when you're seeing everything fresh, when you're staying curious, when you're treating each day like it's new. Complacency requires familiarity, routine, the assumption that you know how everything works. First day thinking doesn't allow that. Second, it protects you from desperation. You can't get desperate when you're working with urgency, but also with purpose. Desperation comes from panic, from realizing you've wasted time and now you're trying to make up for it all at once. Last day urgency is different. It's calm, it's focused. It's about doing what matters right now without the drama of emergency. So here's what I want you to do starting tomorrow morning. Before your feet hit the floor, remind yourself of two things. First, I've never lived this day before. I get to see what it brings. Second, I don't know if I'll get another one like it. I better make it count. Those two thoughts, held together, will change the way you move through your day. When you sit down with your family, be there. Really be there. See them like you're meeting them for the first time. Notice the details. Listen like you've never heard their stories before. But also speak truth. Have the real conversations. Don't put off saying what needs to be said. Work like it matters because it does. Love like it's precious because it is. Build like you're creating something permanent, but enjoy the process because it's happening right now. Every day is actually both things I've been talking about. It's literally the first time this specific day has ever existed. October 4th, 2025 has never happened before in all of human history. And it could genuinely be your last. Not to be morbid, but to be honest. So you're not pretending when you live this way. You're just acknowledging reality and responding to it appropriately. The question that ties everything together is this: am I building something today that I'd be proud of if it were all I had? Time to build. That's it. That's the whole philosophy in one sentence. If you can answer yes to that question at the end of each day, you're doing it right. You're combining wonder and urgency, gratitude and accountability, beginner's mind and expert's discipline. You're awake. You're participating. You're creating something that matters while there's still time. Now get out there and make your life mean something. Starting right now, today's the first day, and it might be the last. So act accordingly.